Alafi, I'm Dr. Gloria Lattimore Peace, host and producer of OmniU Presents the H3O Art of Life show. The title of this show is Scholars Without Borders, and we're making the point that education cannot be confined to a classroom, not even to a city, a community, a city, a state, a nation. Education has to go far beyond the confines of locale and reach out to other places in order to be fully developed. And I have two people in the studio with me who obviously believe in that because they have just returned from Brazil. And they are both students, Northeastern Illinois University students, at the Jacob H. Carruthers. Let me back this up. At the late Dr. Jacob H. Carruthers Center for Inner City Studies, where for many years I was a student and a faculty person. And I'm very happy to have with me Donna R. Kunza Gentry and Jacob H. Carruthers IV. I am just so glad to see this young man sitting over there. You know you carrying some weight, don't you, brother?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, and both of you are carrying weight because you've come from an institution that bears his name and carries his legacy, so you cannot play, because Jacob don't play that. I was one of his students, so I know that he would not play mediocrity. So now you've been off to Brazil, and tell me how you came to go there, and say as much as you want to about your experience going there, coming back, and whatever else you need to say. We have about 59 minutes. We can do this.
Well, I'll start by saying that thank you for having us. We visited Salvador da Bahia, Brazil, and we went on this international adventure to do an educational comparative analysis of North America and South America educational system. And so it was a very educational, cultural, and spiritual experience. And we visited many educational institutions, community institutions, spiritual institutions, where we interviewed people and we talked to students, talked to elite officials, political leaders. So it was an eye-opening experience. I don't think none of us would be the same.
Let's talk about the us. Who was the us, Jacob?
Well, us, it was the Utatu Collective that organized the trip, and it was a body of, I believe, 7 students from the Carruthers Center for Inner City Students, and a grad assistant from Northeastern Illinois, from the main campus at Northeastern Illinois University, and 2 professors, Dr. Anderson Thompson and Dr. Sharon Bethia. And as a group, we went to Brazil to do the research in Salvador Bahia.
All right. So this originated at the Center for Inner Cities, the Carruthers Center for Inner City Studies, and Dr. Anderson Thompson, who was my former colleague, was one of the professors who organized this, along with your group, the
Utatu Collective Student Organization.
All right.
Dr. Thompson wanted to take, this is the first time that he's taken a student group abroad to Brazil. So this was a new experience for him as well. We raised funds to go. So it started with the student organization. He came to us and he said we will organize. He said, I'm thinking about putting together a research tour. And we agreed to go, and we raised funds, and then we developed an international student organization called H3O, International Research Study Team. Is that correct? And we went under that as well. So.
And so you were there for what length of time?
10 days.
You were there for 10 days. How long is the trip to Brazil? How many hours were you?
Well, from Miami, the flight is like 8 or 9 hours.
Okay, but first you had to get to Miami.
Yeah, we had to get to Miami.
Okay.
Yeah, fly to Miami. Then then on the trip going there, we landed straight in Salvador.
Okay.
So yeah, that flight was about 9 hours.
So about 18 hours off.
You would 18 hours. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. How was that for you? Taxing.
Yeah, well, the flight from Miami to Brazil, it's long flight.
Okay.
You gotta just
Yeah.
adjust and just try to be patient. So.
Okay.
And
Okay.
we hit a lot of turbulence, and we got pretty scared going from Miami to Salvador. Our plane was smoking gas, and so we got there
But
safe.
you
though.
survived.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
we
got there.
survived.
Okay. So when you arrived there, what time of day or night did you arrive? Was it daylight outside? Was it dark?
It was daylight.
It was daylight outside.
Yeah, we arrived in Brazilian time, in Salvador time. It was like 9 o'clock in the morning that we
Okay.
arrived.
Okay. So that the only thing you could do then probably was just go and fall out somewhere and try to get some sleep,
Yeah,
because your
yeah.
clock was all completely turned around.
Yeah, we got some rest that first day when
Yeah.
we first
Right.
landed. Yeah.
And then after the rest, now tell me about the adventure.
Okay, yeah. Well, after the rest, the second day, that's when we began our research and began to visit different institutions. The first institution that we visited was actually an institution for a city council position called the Secretary of Reparations. But we met
the
with
Secretary of Reparations.
Yes, yeah,
Good.
Yeah, so and they actually had a city council position for that position, for the Secretary of Reparations position, and we visited the person who held the position at that time, and his name was Mito Salvage. You know, my Portuguese pronunciations isn't out there, but yeah, that was his name. And we had an interview with him, and he was telling us how he had came from the black movement, and now he had this city position for Secretary of Reparations, and he was really excited about moving the reparations in Salvador Bahia forward. So yeah, and we sat down and we had a long, lengthy interview. I asked him a lot of questions about affirmative action and in Salvador Bahia, and he explained a lot to us, and it was a great experience.
From whom were they seeking reparations?
Well, actually,
From the Portuguese?
Well, actually, it wasn't really a monetary thing. It was more of an implementing equality standards as far as affirmative action being implemented and organizing around that. That was really more of the ideas of the reparations and creating better living standards and equality for Afro-Brazilians. It really wasn't about a monetary thing from any particular entity.
It was mainly from Brazil. There was the reparations seemed to be formatted toward Brazilian government, the Brazilian country.
How strong is the Portuguese influence? Is it still present? Because, you know, the Portuguese were the ones who colonized the Brazilians.
Right.
So is their presence felt or seen? Is the language still there?
The language is completely...
Well, their presence is felt and seen.
Right.
All right.
Portuguese is the dominant language. As a matter of fact, English, the Afro-Brazilians in Salvador da Bahia don't speak English. It's very rare and sort of forbidden. They don't want them to really learn English because that way they would communicate outside of Brazil. And they're really weary of Brazilians, Afro-Brazilians reaching out to African Americans because they don't want to make them rebellious, you know, because of the movements that we've had here in the United States, the 60s, and they kind of trade they sort of see us as a plan for what they are trying to do.
A role model.
Right, a role model. And so they don't speak English. It's very rare that you find a Brazilian that speaks English, and most of the time we were told by some people we were with that it's hard for them to learn English in any way, and they don't think it's really necessary because of the oppression going on there. What's the purpose of learning English? Because they're so secluded, you know, and ostracized from society there that, you know, they just stay in the Brazilian language, the Portuguese language.
Tell me about housing. Well, tell me about housing.
Well, the housing, they have poor and they have rich. The rich are
The
mainly
haves and the have-nots.
Right, the haves and the have-nots. I mean,
Okay.
it's strictly that way. It's really no in between. You have Victorian area, they call it Victoria, and it's completely rich, big, beautiful homes. And then you had the Paveras, which are the poor areas where the Africans stay, African Brazilians stay. And the housing is very poor, very, very poor. It's sort of, it reminds me of Soweto in South Africa almost. The way the houses are very close together. They're like 2 to 3 stories buildings, and they're pretty much combined, compact together.
Like tenements.
Right, and they're very colorful, very colorful. So it's a very poor.
Did you find out anything about the employment rate or unemployment rate? When I visited Dakar, the unemployment rate was over 70%.
Employment
For, the local people, not for those people who had managed to get into the so-called middle class or elite class.
Well, we haven't organized a lot of our information and data that we've gotten because we just got back.
Well, when you met these students or the people that you did meet, what kind of employment did they have? Did they worked where, doing what?
Labor, restaurants, hotels, cleaners, keepers, things of that nature. Sort of
Menial.
like menial jobs, servant jobs, mainly servant jobs. Now there were some black-owned businesses that we did run into. There are very few, and they're looked up to because they're so rare. But most of the people they go into the inner city, into the inner circle. They work and then they go back. So it's mainly manual labor and servant.
How did you find the students? Are they aggressive students? Are they apathetic students? Are they like the students here? Some of them are doing very well, such as yourself and Jacob. And then there are the others who are just pretty much along for the ride. What kind of students did you encounter?
The students in Salvador Bahia, the educational system is very unlevel. It's not equal. So you have this situation in Salvador, in Bahia, whereas most students can't get to high school. They have the education system was created to keep them oppressed. So a lot of them have hopelessness, but they have lots of new institutions and community centers that they are creating there that are making the black consciousness awareness, where it's hard to say compare them to us because they don't have the opportunities we have. Most of them don't get through high school.
Do they have to pay fees to attend school?
No, they have a system that's called, you have grammar school and you go through high school, and then you take a vestibular. They call it a vestibular test. And this vestibular test
Determines whether you go
determine
any
where you go.
further.
Right. And this is the problem with the educational system there. They can't pass this vestibular test because you have private and public school. And public school, of course, is African Brazilians, and they're not, they don't have the programs and adequate things, the necessities needed for them to learn the subjects that they need to master to pass the vestibular test. And the private schools, of course, they are well equipped and they have all the tools and things they need. So this is where the inequality comes in with the educational system. So the vestibular test becomes the primary focus of the educational system, because if you can't pass it, then you can't go any further. And this is where students get discouraged, because you go through a system that you know you're not going to pass this test. And so they're creating, this is why we visited Steve Biko Institution, because Steve Biko was the first institution to develop the vestibular prep tests, and it's not a school; it's a community center, and they're founded on. They have programs they use culture like as a foundation, because what happens is people become hopeless, and because they can't pass the test, they're not given the opportunity to learn how to pass the test. So the vestibular becomes the primary focus of the whole system, and because of that, they create quota systems and affirmative action to equalize that, because the public school and the private schools cannot compete. So, because the private schools have to take the vestibular as well. But, so they created a quota system which allows certain amount of students to enter the university. Things
Typical colonial education.
Yeah.
That's what that is. That's privileged and underprivileged or non-privileged, because I don't think there's such a thing as underprivileged. Either you have privilege or you don't have privilege. So what they're doing is they're using a kind of filter to make certain that they will only include certain people, and then the rest of them will be excluded. And when you use the term hopeless, I think that may be a misapplication, because if you know for a fact that some effort that you're putting forth is fruitless, then you just lose interest in doing it. It's not a matter of being hopeless. What was there to hope about? If you have generations of people who have this same experience, pretty much it's well known.
Exactly.
That it's not going to have any value, and it's not going to produce any results.
And this is the problem. Because most of the students, like you say, like we are enthusiastic, we have opportunities, we look forward to what schools we're going to go to, what we're going to do to change the world, and not saying that students don't have that enthusiasm, but the majority of them has been stagnated in a feeling of feeling like it's hard. What's the use of me taking the test? I'm not going to pass the test. And so Steve Biko Institute has created a program, and also what are the other two we went to?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. As far as the students that we were introduced to at institutions like the Steve Biko Institute, and there was a school called Eliaye, who also helped, and also a organization called Os Negos. And the students that we were introduced there, they were enthusiastic because of the environment and the support system at those community centers, at those institutions, and trying to raise black consciousness. So there we met enthusiastic students who were ready to study, who were ready to learn about African history, and who were ready to prepare themselves to pass the vestibular and go on to higher education. As far as the masses of the people, there was a problem with, as far as any investment into the educational system, as far as the information that we received. Saying educational system there in the public schools are extremely underfunded by the government, and really not even the government doesn't have any intentions for them at all. They're just underfunded. And so yeah, the masses of the people, you had a lack of enthusiasm for education, a lack of involvement. But as far as the institutions that we visited and students that we came in contact with, they were pretty enthusiastic and happy to see us. And we sat down with a group of young children at the Steve Biko Institute, and they were very enthusiastic, had a lot of questions for us. And if it wasn't for time, they had plenty of questions for us that they wanted to ask us, and they were very enthusiastic.
How did you bridge the language barrier?
They had translators. Actually, they had there was a student from here, a young girl who had a Fulbright that was working with the Steve Biko Institute. She was from Penn State. It was two sisters. They had one from there and one from the United States, and they used them as translators for us. And they were good translators. They had one translator for the students, and then a translator for us into English, and so that was really interesting.
That must have been one of the highlights.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
And I believe we got it on videotape. So as we compile our information system, we'll have that available for the community.
What would you have liked to see? What would you like to see change about the system of education that you encountered with the public schools being underfunded? Because see, I think you're looking at this from the perspective that the privilege or the opportunities that you have been able to enjoy are widespread in this country, and disabuse yourself of that idea. What do you think Reverend Meeks was doing when he was taking students out of the city into these other school districts, saying Chicago public schools are underfunded in black communities?
Right.
We have the same kind of thing where you have schools that you've got all these specialty schools, charter schools and academies, and you name it, language, math, whatever, and so forth and so on. And you have a system where you have to what's it called, where they draw a name out of a hat, pretty much, lottery system, where all the parents are clamoring because they want their children to get into the best schools, because obviously if the children get better education, their opportunities will increase in line with that. And so everybody wants their child to have the opportunity to go to a school where they will have an opportunity to learn, where they will be safe and secure from all kinds of violence that exists in the city. And so you have here, in your case, because you're adults and because you're lucky enough to be at Northeast Illinois University Carruthers Center for Inner City Studies, and having this opportunity, you have no idea how little this opportunity abounds. And consequently, if whatever you would like to see changed in Brazil, you would need to like to see it changed here, because those same conditions can be found right here in this town where you live. So what would you like to see changed about the system where the young people cannot get the necessary skills in order to be able to pass the test so that they can further their education? What would you like to see different?
Well, I would like to, it's more a bigger gap than what we have here, because they don't even have teachers. The teachers are not paid most of the time. I mean, it's very rare that you have a teacher that's being paid. So right there you have inadequate teachers. And that's another thing that they do at the university. And Steve Biko, they try to send students to universities so they can come back and teach, because they need teachers. And just like with us, we need teachers, but it's sort of difficult making a comparison, because our opportunities, although we have problems here in America in our educational system, which are very deep problems to us, but when you go there and see their problems of how the education is such a big gap, it's almost uncomparable. Like when Brother Jake was talking about the different places we visited, EIA, and there was a school, and yes, they are enthusiastic, but it's such a small amount. Half the students are not going to school. They're not going to school because they see, what's the point of it? I would like to see for them in Brazil, in Salvador da Bahia, a system of equality where they're recognized as being worthy to educate, because the state of their educational system, they're not cared for. They don't care. They just simply don't care. And so you have these different institutions that we visited that are sort of doing a revolution type of thing, where they're trying to force the situation to be looked at or to be given attention to. Sort of like in the 60s, they're sort of in that mode. So it's kind of difficult to say that.
Well, I see the differences. I see the differences as being less profound, because in one case you say, well, they don't even have teachers, but there are cases in which you have teachers, but you don't have learning going on. I don't know if one is worse than the other. If you have children sitting in a classroom with an expectation that somebody's going to teach them something and it doesn't happen, or if you have children sitting at home with no expectation because they don't have a teacher in the first place. You know, neither one of those is desirable.
Yeah.
But this thing about equality that you spoke to, about having somebody who has an actual position of trying to get to move the issue of equality, I guess, forward so that it will be at least recognized as a problem, if not remedied or reconciled. What do you have some idea of what the percentage of Afro or African Brazilians is relative to the other ethnic groups in the Brazilian population? Are they considered to be a minority? Are they and what are the other ethnic groups, and how are they positioned in the society?
And that's interesting because they of course the majority are African Brazilian.
The
I would
majority
say
population
70%.
is African Brazilian.
Yeah, and the state of Bahia has 85%
85% African
85%.
Brazilian. Okay.
Yeah, actually, it has the most Africans outside the continent of Africa. Have the
Okay.
highest percentage of Africans other
Okay.
than the motherland itself. That's how
Okay.
many they have. They have an issue of defining who's black because of the mixture of cultures. They have a Japanese community there. So it is majority black. We didn't get into the other cultures too much, but I know at the University of Bahia, they have different groups that are going into the university. The Afro-Brazilians are the one that's mainly having the problem because of their educational conditioning, and which puts them at a disadvantage to pass the vestibular.
Well, did you meet some counterparts? Somebody who was at the university level as you are? Did you meet some African Brazilians who were like you just graduated from with your bachelor's degree? Did you meet somebody who was about ready to go into grad school?
Yeah, we did at the university. The students that came in with the president, there were some students. I don't know what grade they were in. We didn't get a chance to. I didn't get a chance to.
But they were
communicate.
university students.
They were university. They were supposed to be African Brazilian.
Okay.
Some of them look kind of light to me, but
Okay.
and also the young lady that was our translator at the Steve Biko Institute, she had her master's degree. She
Okay.
came through the Steve Biko Institute, and she came back to teach and help prepare other students. So it's not impossible. It's just very challenging.
It's rare.
It's very rare, and it's very challenging. It's not a lot of schools. It's not like here we have. If you don't go here, you don't like school, you probably can go here. You can like Reverend Meeks. He's able to fight to come from here to here. There is not too many places to fight to go from here to here. It's basically fighting to have education, quality education, or a school, or teachers. So
So the community is self-educating.
basically,
They're educating themselves. They're setting up these centers and populating these centers with their own
Yep.
people.
Yep.
That's not unlike the way the Center for Inner City Studies was founded. Actually, some people decided that they were not getting the kind of education that they needed to have. And so they just commandeered some classrooms. They just commandeered some spaces and assigned their own teachers. They picked out some people, like for example, we know Hunter Adams III is this really heavyweight brother
Right.
in the community. Well, they just went and got themselves some of the heavyweights out of their community and told them, teach us. And they just took over rooms in Abraham Lincoln Center and called it the communiversity. And they made themselves a school because they knew that there were things that they wanted to learn that they were not going to get taught ever in any institution in Chicago. So they established it themselves. And from there, you went to the federally funded program, which was written by Dr. Don Smith. He wrote a he wrote a proposal and said, which said in essence, they have the inner city had a lot of non-black teachers who didn't know what they were doing and were in essence afraid of the children because they didn't understand their behavior and everything was threatening and all of that. So he said, okay, we're going to teach them how to teach black children. And so he wrote a proposal and got it funded, and then they brought that program in, and that kind of pushed the community out of the way and actually replaced it in a sense. But the whole idea of a community educating itself, it should not be thrown away, even if every child is eventually able to pass this magical test and go on through the university. Community should never give the education function to anyone outside of itself. If somebody wants to assist, you know, if somebody wants to fund, if somebody wants to volunteer, you know, to assist in some way, that's one thing. But the community should always control its own education. It must do it because otherwise it won't get the end product that it needs.
Yeah, and we had visited the state university about here, and where they talked about that being an overall goal to implement more African history and more African cultural center education inside the schools, to start teaching Afro-Brazilians about African history and African culture, where in the course in other colonial educational systems it's excluded. And right now they're in the same process of trying to get that implemented in the state university and the federal university and get more African history available to Afro-Brazilian students. And especially now that the affirmative action has been put in place since 2003, and enrollment of Afro-Brazilians is up 40% every year since then. And so now that they have more Afro-Brazilians in the schools, it's becoming more important for them to implement more African history and African culture into the school system. So that is a push as far as the reparations movement going on in Salvador about here.
It would be wonderful if the students meet that kind of energy with the appropriate energy, that here is somebody fighting on your behalf. You know, you cannot afford to come in here and just sit up and, you know, and waste your time, fritter away your time, because Steve Biko gave his life for the African consciousness movement. And consequently, you know, you have no right to name an institution after him if you're not going to be dead serious about what it is you're doing. And everybody who's in there needs to be very serious, because that institution is based on the shedding of blood.
Yeah, and Steve Biko and that institute there, they were
very serious.
They were very serious, and they were creating some very serious students. And a lot of what would you call them, like liaisons or tour guides or people from those community organizations that came to help us, guide us through the city. They were educated, and they came through the Steve Biko Institute and went to the universities and graduated, and they were coming back to help their communities. And so the Steve Biko Institute had a very big influence inside of Salvador by here. You know, it had a very big influence on us, actually. So,
and they have high hopes. They're planning to build a higher education institute. Their dreams were 2010.
Yeah, about 2012.
2012. They hope to have a higher education because they do believe in self-education. And they use a lot of culture. They have drum programs. They're very much into music. Music and drums is their root of their inspiration. The Osinegos. My Portuguese is not right. My Portuguese is not all that good either. But they have when we visited that place, the institution, the community center, I would call it social center, where they implement teaching children how to play the drums and keeping them attracted to education, where they can get them in this environment, and they teach them the prep for the vestibular and motivate them, teach them African history. And when we got there, they gave us this great welcome with the drums, and the children were just playing the drums. It was really beautiful. They gave us a lot of gifts, T-shirts and things like that, and we gave gifts to them as well.
I'm glad you did that.
Yeah, we did that. But we found each institution, whether it's a school, a social center, or community center, art center, they all implement music. Music and culture is the key to keeping the students' attention on the importance of education. So that was
Music is a vehicle for education, you know, and it is, you know, the just the mere idea that the public schools have taken music and art out of the curriculum as though this was some expense that, you know, could not be afforded. All they did was to reduce the probability of success with the so-called 4 R's, you know.
Yeah.
Because music is you got to have a soundtrack.
Right. And it's used not only to inspire the people, but we were discussing earlier, me and Jake, was how they used the music also, not the Afro, the people that are in control. They keep the Afro-Brazilians in control, control them by keeping them entertained as well. They have a lot of festivals there. Most of them are originated from original marks. You know, they're marking a special event in their history or culture. But the problem becomes where they keep them in festivals.
Party.
Keep them in a festival mode. There's a festival all the time. Like I said, some of them are good festivals that are demarking a special event, like the Old Nazgos.
I don't understand what you're trying to say.
Right, where they have the parade where.
They have a carnival.
The carnival, right.
Right, they have a carnival like other Latin American islands, things like that, like a Mardi Gras. They have a carnival there every February. And what else? Negos and Iliaye. They all have carnival blocks, positions within the carnival, where they use that as a vehicle to tell history to the community. Use music and dance within the carnival to express themes in African history and African culture to the community. So they say that's how a lot of the conscious levels about different things in history were raised by it, because the people are so interested in the carnival. It's a big celebration.
Right. They grab the attention at those
so they
carnivals.
use that. So they use that to promote African history, African culture in the carnival, and they use a lot of music and dance. So.
And they have different themes every year for those carnivals.
You had spiritual experiences, and tell me about those.
Oh yeah, they have lots of ilays. Ilays are spiritual houses or spiritual communities based mainly on the spiritual system Contemplate, where they have the Rishas with Contemplate originated from Nigeria, the Yoruba tradition, and it came over with them as captives over to Brazil. And it sort of kept them. That was the one thing that wasn't like. As in America, we were stripped of our religion, our gods, and language. But in Brazil, they were allowed to keep their spiritual system, and over time, the Roman Catholic Church sort of co-opted, and they did like a synchronous together side by side. You have the African gods and the Catholic saints, and that's another thing that these ilays, spiritual houses, they have systems set up for the vestibular as well. They're working on that, on helping students to prepare them for this test, because they understand the importance of it as well. But yes, we had divinations, they call it, where you visit the dolte, which is sort of like a saber in Africa, or a guru in India. And we visit, me and another student.
The cowrie shells, throw the cowrie shells.
So I actually got to experience that. Me and two other students, the other students didn't experience it because of the rain, because it rained, so those days they didn't do it on the rain day. But it was very interesting because that was the only time I heard them speak in an African language. And it's sort of like the religion here in the Sanctified Church
Speaking in tongues.
yeah, speaking in tongues, but they're very, very serious about it, and it's very sacred, and it's to be highly respected. We visited one place where we had the Risha Dow's made. Some of us had a Risha Dow's. One of them, Yaminja. They worship Yaminja. That was at the Vadum. They call it Vadum. It originated from voodoo, but voodoo was given a negative condemnation, right?
It's a corruption.
So they changed it to Vadum, and they're called the Yaminja, where they worship Shango, the god of fire, and is represented by the water of Yaminja, the mermaid, and we got to experience a spiritual ceremony where they burned the fires of Shango. It was really something to see them in a trance of a deep trance of spiritual state, and you know, and it was an experience. And then they gave us our
Divination.
right, and gave us a Rishes, and
I
I
hope
was
you got good news.
oh I was very pleased with my divination. I was actually named Yaminja and Nana, and it actually did all my children and my husband, and it was really interesting. They knew I was initiated, and so it was a good spiritual experience. We had to wear all white when you go to those divinations and the ceremony. We were invited back that Tuesday evening for the ceremony of Shango, and Shango is the god of fire, the warrior, and stuff like that. So and Olodumare is the oneness. It's considered the consciousness, the oneness of God, and all the other rishas are the vehicles in which it's expressed. You know, so that was.
There are people here, you know, who observe those same traditions. People in this city.
Yes, because the people that set our divinations up connected here with Professor Anderson. He's a physics professor there. Learned English at the age of 10 and helped his community and built this Ile compound, which is called the Vadum community. And he connected with her attorney Watkins, if I'm not mistaken. That's the lady that he communicated with and set up our deviation. And he came and picked us up, took us to the Ile and brought us back and, you know, explained things to us. And it was a very spiritual.
Did you meet any expatriates, people who had originally lived outside of Brazil who are now living there among the indigenous people? Because when you travel to Africa, you always find people who have left the States and gone to Africa and would not think of coming back. And I just wondered if you met any of those people.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think we didn't meet any personally as students, but Dr. Anderson Thompson, he knows a lot of people there, and he's well acquainted there, and he had plans on continued research there. And he's talking about future visits to Brazil and making sure that those contacts that we made there are concrete.
Right.
And so he'll have more information on people who have repatriated from there and made that their home. Yeah.
Tell me about the food.
Well, we're both vegetarians, so we had a difficult time eating.
Did you?
Yeah, because it's a lot of meat served. We were fortunate to find some places that could accommodate us in our eating, but you have to be very careful what you eat. You can't eat off the street because of parasites. You get very sick. Dr. Thompson became very sick on the trip. It passed through, and a lot of us was experienced different digestive problems, even though we were eating in the places that they say were safe to eat. But the food, actually, our research team, we were assigned different categories to research while we were there. So unfortunately, the person that was in charge of food is not here. So we had different things to really dig into. So I'm not familiar with all the different varieties of food, but the food is everywhere. It's everywhere.
Well, there are a lot of street vendors, a lot of people on the streets with their own crafts, their own things that they made. Were you able to buy any clothing that was
In Pallarina.
okay?
They call it Pallarina Square. And actually Pallarina was the whipping post for the slaves. And that's where actually when Michael Jackson did his video, if you've seen, They Don't Really
seen that.
Care About Us.
And
And
I've seen that just recently.
And I understand that video now. He had Ola Demare, Oladum on his T-shirt with the peace sign. I didn't get that T-shirt, but I want to go back and get it. But it's a square there where in Pallarina where you just shop. You just shop, 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 shop. Everybody's coming up to us. A lot of children on the street. We had a category. Our sister Wanda of our team was doing street children. There are a lot of children that are on the streets, and they kind of gravitate to Pallarina because you have tourists and a lot of festivals and things like that. So they're begging for monies and things like that. But Pallarina is the spot for shopping. You know,
How are the children?
how old are they?
How are the children? How did you find the children? What is the condition of the children?
Well, yeah, the children, the street children that we met when we were in Pellerino, a lot of children soliciting or begging or out there. Our translators were just telling us that they were like normal street children who had got addicted to drugs. And they were kind of young, yeah. They were pretty young, but other children, and of course you had a different dynamic, children who were in the streets, and then we visited institutions like Steve Biko, and you had children who were in school. So it was kind of the same, it's the same situation, African people all around the world. And so yeah, we had children like that were on the street, and every time we came there, they were extremely dirty, but our translator is saying they might not necessarily be homeless. They might just be children addicted to drugs who are out in the streets, who actually have a home and have turned away from their parents, run away, and things like that. So you have the same type of situation here, where some children have homes with support systems, and some children have homes with no support system. And so those are the dynamics of the children there. So you had
And children, drug addiction.
Yeah, you had children that was addicted to
street.
drugs at very young ages.
How young?
Yeah, they were pretty young.
He said 7 up, the age of 7.
Now, who is giving drugs to 7-year-olds?
Yeah, we didn't get a chance to interview anybody like that. So get that involved into the purveyor's life as far as the restricted, compare those purveyors to ghettos. We weren't able to get directly into those and research into that specifically. But they just said they have a serious drug problem.
Yeah, serious drug problem, and a lot of the institutions that we visited, they explained to us how they have a movement on. They're aware of that problem, and they're trying to address that problem of homelessness. There are a lot of young girls of prostitution going on too. There are a lot of gang activities, black on black crime, gangs, same thing. And they have a system. The police system is really interesting because they call it the death squad, and they're army and they're police at the same time. They don't ask questions, and we've been told by the people that were educating us about our environment as we go along, how a lot of it's a sort of a genocide going on with our young black children there, where they're just getting killed by these death squad policemen. They're just killing them, pretty much. And it's very dangerous there. I felt that it was dangerous in some ways because of that system, because the people of Bahia are just now, they have civil rights, and that's why they have these institutions teaching them their civil rights, citizenship they call it, because they have them but they don't know how to apply them or know what they consist of. They've been oppressed in a system of contentment, where some of them don't even really realize that they just accept things the way they are. And so they it's sort of dangerous. And I wanted to say something about the taxi cabs too. The speed limit is fast there. Actually, a man got ran over right in front of our hotel. Just ran over because you know how the teenagers here in America, they walk real slow across the street, you know, and they dare a car to hit them. They can't do that in Salvador da Bahia. Everything is real fast, and it's very dangerous. And you know, it's now when you're in the square, the Pelavera Square, and doing the activities and the festivals, it's not really that dangerous. Everybody's kind of happy and drinking and having fun. But we've heard, we were informed of other areas where the death squad was taking place. And there are young people, they called it a genocide, where they don't ask questions, they shoot. And we were told they set up, remember when they was saying something about how they shoot families to set them up for the government to show a certain, well, I don't want to go in it because I'm not clear on the information there, but it's some things going on there politically that's genocidal that we didn't get a chance to really go into, but we were informed of it. And we've decided we've created an alliance with these institutions. We've exchanged emails. We're going to try to see how we can help. And when we ask, can we help? The help that they're asking for mainly is donations.
I could see that.
Donations.
Right. They have to buy materials.
And that's the key thing. They don't have a lot of materials. Like they're very intrigued with African Americans, like history, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King. Our leaders, he said in 1982, they did not know that Africa was in Egypt. I mean, Egypt was in Africa. Lord have mercy. Egypt was in Africa. So that's just how much they're coming up to being educated about things. And they're using African American history to help them to learn more about the history. So they're familiar with Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and Marcus Garvey. And they would like to have more materials like that. So we plan to send them videos and books and things like that so they can have this material to share.
Very good. That's a good purpose for Utatu to undertake. And there were 7 students of Utatu.
7 of Utatu. And
that were with you. Who was this graduate assistant?
It was an assistant to Dr. Sharon Bethia.
Her name was Simone Rose.
Is she at the Carruthers Center, or is she at the North Campus?
She's location at the North Campus, but she was extremely helpful to us.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and she was very involved and was very involved in everything that we were doing.
Oh yeah, we adopted her. She's in Utatu now.
Yeah, she's in Utatu now.
Because she can still be.
The clothing that you wore, the weather. You spoke of rain. Heavy rain, I presume. If the rain prevented somebody from getting a divination, it had to be some heavy rain.
Well, it really wasn't that heavy, except where they was given a deviation. It didn't have a ceiling.
Oh, okay.
So any degree of water. But actually, the weather was on our side. Actually, it rained hard when we was in the room sleep, or in early hours of the morning. But we experienced great weather. We were really lucky because they were telling us to bring raincoats and umbrellas, and it was going to be a trim vacation. Not vacation, but
not a lot of problems with mosquitoes.
We had bugs that bit all our ankles.
Okay.
I don't know what you call them.
You didn't take anything?
We took
repellents?
them. We took mosquito repellent and Skin So Soft, and
but it didn't prevent they were immune to those.
Right.
Okay.
Right. It wasn't bad though, because we were visiting during the winter, or the winter time.
Yeah, the season for that part of the world. It was the winter time there, but it was still fairly hot and humid.
Yeah,
so.
but we was off the ocean, so we had a good breeze.
Okay.
We got to visit the lighthouse where the captives that they captured from Africa, brought them in on the Saints Bay, they call it.
Any cultural events outside of the the carnivals, any plays or?
Well, actually, we went there unknowingly, going into a cultural celebration that they call Sound Jiao, and and the way they explained it to us, it was the equivalent of a Thanksgiving here in North America, where the families got together and sat down and had dinner, and they had an extended vacation, a weekend, and maybe 2 more days into the week, and we went there. The first week we were there, and then the next week they were celebrating that. So the city kind of shut down, and that's where we went there, and we was able to be a part of that. We had the Minister of Culture at the State University.
Billy.
Had invited us to the backstage. And we had free access to the backstage presentations that was there. So and Pellerino was packed full of people, and we're going to be able to show those videos to the community probably in the coming weeks. But yeah, now was a big city and state celebration where they said that families shut down from work and they go and they visit their families, and other people come and see the concerts that was going on as part of a celebration. Everybody met in Pellerino. Pellerino was packed full of people, and it was a real fun time.
Almost like Obama in Washington Park.
Yeah.
Seriously, that's how it was.
Yeah, it was a fun time. It was a real big festival there. So and it had lasted all through the weekend and a few days into the week. So it was a real big celebration. Everybody was there celebrating. So.
Are these are future excursions limited only to students at Northeastern Illinois University's Carruthers Center for Inner City Studies, or do you think that they might actually be expanded so that other people who might be interested might want to go and help do some work over there now that you know the terrain, pack up some books?
Right. We went to, we actually met Northwestern students there. We also were participating in a conference there, and Jacob Carruthers, he was one of the presenters in the conference, him and Dr. Pathia, so he can tell you a little bit about the conference where there were a lot of students.
You'll have to tell me on another show because they just flashed me a 1-minute sign. But I'm glad that you got a chance to make a presentation, and so that you could show them what we got over here.
Right. And just to let you know, Dr. Thompson talked about being able to extend the student pool to other universities and other students across the country. So we were very interested in that and part of the future excavations to Brazil and other study tours outside the country.
And we plan to go other places.
All right.
Yes.
All right. So, Scholars Without Borders. And I'm so happy that you came on to tell us about your experience and to encourage other scholars to look outside the classroom doors for a more varied and holistic experience. Thank you, Jacob H. Carruthers IV and Donna R. Kunza Gentry for coming to the show and for bringing us all this information.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
You're welcome.